In this video, I'm going to tell you how to stay fit in your 30s. If you want to control what you eat and control your body, then hit the subscribe button so you never miss a video. You're 30, congratulations. Your 30s actually aren't a bad decade. I'm about almost 4 years into my 30s. Hard to believe at this point. But it's way better than your 20s. In your 20s, you're still looking for direction. You don't know where you're going. You're confused. You don't have a lot of direction. You don't know what you want to do with your life. You're probably still living with your parents. You have a college degree that doesn't have a lot of value. If you're a guy, you're still kind of immature. If you're a lady, you're probably still kind of immature. But once you're 30, you're done with college, you're done with grad school, you might even be married, you might have some kids, you've started your professional life. At least you should be at that point. If not, keep working towards it. It's definitely worth it. Your 30s are actually a good time of your life. You're young, you're able, you can do things, you have goals, you're thinking about the future, what you want to do. But it's really hard to stay healthy once you reach your 30s. When you're in your 20s, you're in college and you might be playing some type of sport, or you're just really young and you have free time and you're doing intramurals, or you're playing sports with your classmates. You just have more time for athletics. And then once you get out of school and you have a professional life, and then maybe you get married and then you have kids and you get a professional job and you're sitting at a desk all day, and then you're commuting 2 hours a week, and then you're in meetings, and then you have social events where there's a lot of drinking and a lot of bad food. It's really hard to stay in shape. Your metabolism starts to go down a little bit. It's harder to add muscle. Really, you peak around 21, 22 physically. So when you're in your 30s, you're already declining. It's hard to believe, and that's kind of sad to believe, but you can attenuate that loss, and there are ways to stay fit after 30. My first tip for you is to eat based off hunger and be aware of what you're eating. It's really easy to get carried away, especially when you're at a social event and you're drunk and you're with other people and you're not really paying attention to what you're eating. You're just kind of going with the flow. You're not paying attention. You stop paying attention to nutrition labels. You're eating out more because you have more money. Maybe you're drinking alcohol at these social events. Then you have meetings where they have donuts and bagels. Then you're going to Christmas parties, and we've just passed the holidays, so that's over. But the default is not to have a great body and great health. That never happens. You have to actively pursue that, and you have to be aware of what you're doing. So when you're in your 20s, you can get away with drinking pizza and beer and going to the cafeteria and eating cookies and ice cream when you're studying for your finals exams. You have a little more leeway. When you're in your 30s, you don't really have that. And you have to get rid of what I call hedonic eating. Hedonic eating is just eating based off of pleasure and not really based on nutrition. But when you reach your 30s, you really have to emphasize nutrition and longevity, and you have to sacrifice a little bit of that gustatory pleasure in order to have the health and fitness that you want. But it all starts with awareness. You have to be aware of what you're eating, where you're eating it, the quantities that you're eating, the quality. My second tip for you is to avoid office treats. This is a good tip for anybody who has a white collar job or you work in an office. I remember when I worked in an outpatient clinic as a physical therapist, and patients were bringing all sorts of stuff. Holidays were the worst, but you wouldn't believe that throughout the year, there was always something. There was always a birthday party, people were bringing donuts, there's bagels, especially on Fridays for whatever reason. Patients always rewarded us with food, which had lots of fat and sugar. Then we would go out, we would get drinks, or there would be some sort of potluck. There was always some reason to have a bunch of food in the office. I used to work part-time at an engineering firm, not as an engineer, but something else. And there was this guy who always brought 2 boxes of donuts to the office every Friday. And I remember being so terrified. Oh my gosh, I'm going to eat 2 donuts today. I'm going to eat 2 bagels or whatever. I would always finish whatever was left. And I hated Fridays because they always brought donuts. And then you go to a meeting and somebody's always bringing some sort of treat, which is not very healthy. Somebody tells me that's an American custom. It's not really a European or Asian custom, but leave it to the Americans to do something like that. My point is, there's always unhealthy stuff in the office, and if you're spending a lot of time in the office, it's really easy, really tempting to eat that stuff. My best advice, just avoid it. BYO. Remember, be aware of what you're eating and why. If it's just there and it looks tasty, that's probably not a good reason to eat it. My third tip is to be aware of those most vulnerable moments. When are you the most vulnerable? Are you vulnerable when you're stressed? Are you vulnerable when you come home? I remember for me coming home, that first hour after coming home was the worst hour. I don't know why. Maybe I just wanted to relax. Maybe it just, I think just eating all that food, all that salt, sugar, and fat just created a lot of endorphins, raised my serotonin, relaxed me a little bit. Now I was selling the farm. Now I was selling my health and selling my future, but I felt good in the moment. But it really helped me when I was aware of that vulnerable time, and I started to track how much I ate after work. And so eventually over time, I got it down to just some fruit, maybe some yogurt, maybe a protein shake, very minimal. Even if I went to a restaurant and kept it minimal, because when I knew that I wanted to wake up fresh, I didn't want to wake up with a ton of crap in my stomach and in my intestines. I knew it was going to compromise my sleep, and I knew I wasn't going to wake up very well. For others, those vulnerable times are going to be different times. It just depends, but you need to be aware. You just need to start paying attention. My fourth tip is to make exercise a priority. It's really easy to let exercise fall by the wayside because you have a house, you have kids, you have wife, you have jobs, you have extracurriculars, you're taking kids to practice and music lessons and all this. Really easy to say, oh, I'll start my exercise program next year, next month, whenever. My advice for you, if you're really busy, get it done first thing in the morning. That's usually the only time you have to yourself anyway. And if you just get it done before you get the phone calls and the emails and the demands from your kids, you can just do what you need to do. You don't need to spend a lot of time in the gym. You can get a really good workout in 30 or 40 minutes. If it helps, buy a piece of exercise equipment. Peloton's a really good brand. It's kind of expensive, but Nordic is a good brand too. You don't have to go all out, but if you make it a priority and time is really an issue, then absolutely invest in some exercise equipment. Don't turn it into a laundry rack. That's the fate of most exercise equipment. If you're gonna buy it, make a commitment to actually use it, even if you just walk on it. But if it's available and it's easy to use, especially when it's cold outside for those in North America, you probably don't want to go to the gym. You just want to have as least resistance as possible. And if that means putting a piece of exercise equipment in your home, then do it. My next tip for you, as we're talking about exercise, is lift heavy things. You don't want to do just cardio. Cycling classes are great, swimming is great, running is great. What else? Orange Theory, Zumba, whatever. I don't do Zumba, but if you're a lady, you probably do. That's all great, but you also need to lift some heavy stuff. And I'm talking to everybody here. You need to be doing compound exercises like deadlifts, squats, presses, cable pulls. You need to do some core work. You need to get on the stability ball. That's not really lifting heavy stuff, but you need to work those muscles too. My point is, you're losing muscle mass and bone density as you age. And you don't really notice in your 30s, but you don't want to start working out in your 50s and 60s when you had all of those years to maintain that muscle mass. You can still make tremendous gains in your 30s and 40s, even though you're past your physical prime. But don't just do cardio. You need to do cardio work. You need to do balance work. You need to do meditation. But you really need to lift some heavy stuff. I've started lifting 15 minutes a day every day. I don't like going 2 or 3 days without lifting anything. I know that's a traditional protocol. I don't like to do that. I like to lift things, heavy things in the morning. If it helps, buy some dumbbells and just stand up once an hour and lift it over your head. You can start with that. You don't have to be a bodybuilder to start lifting weights. My next tip for you is to cut down on the liquid calories and the alcohol. I know we'd really like to drink alcohol. I'm a teetotaler myself, but everybody else I know likes to drink, whether it's wine, vodka, whiskey, beer, whatever. It's just alcohol makes us feel good. That's why we drink it. But those are insidious calories, and liquid calories don't really register in our brain nearly as much as solid food. We like to chew things, and when we chew things, the chewing process actually sends a signal to our brain that we're satisfied. It's all part of the whole cycle. We were not designed to consume liquid candy. That's pretty much what soda is, and green tea and sports drinks. Unless you're an endurance athlete or you're an athlete in general and you're burning a lot, you probably don't need the sports drinks with the electrolytes. Soda and beer, those are the easiest things to cut out. If you really enjoy drinking, maybe save it for Saturday night or just one day a week. Don't make it a daily habit. I find that it's really hard to stay lean when you're drinking beer and drinking soda. I don't know anybody who's super healthy and drinks a lot of soda. I just don't know any. There's probably a few that can drink a few beers. If you're doing high levels of exercise, then you can probably get away with more drinking. If you're only working out 45 minutes a day and you have an office job, then probably not. My next tip for you is intermittent fasting. Intermittent fasting has generated a lot of momentum in the last few years, and probably for good reason. I like intermittent fasting, not every day. Sometimes watch my previous video on intermittent fasting, what I think about it. But intermittent fasting, which usually means 18 hours and longer, it can boost human growth hormone, or HGH, and we typically lose that as we get older, but we want to keep that. We want testosterone, we want HGH to maintain our muscle mass, maintain our bone density. And intermittent fasting is the cheapest and easiest way to do that. Now, at first, going 18 hours without food is going to seem like a challenge because you're so used to going 12 hours, and now you got to go an extra 6 hours, and sometimes that can seem really hard sometimes. But trust me, things get easier as you do it. I typically do a 24 or 36 hour fast once a week. In fact, I like the 36 hour fast more because I go an entire day and I just feel like clean and empty after I do that. That definitely boosts HGH. I've been doing that since I was 18. So if an 18-year-old who doesn't know anything can do it, you can certainly do it. Intermittent fasting is not a cure for everything. It is not the end-all be-all. You're not going to lose 50 pounds in a month just because you do intermittent fasting. It is a tool. It's a technique. If you eat breakfast, you're not going to die. Don't believe that if you don't do intermittent fasting that you're not healthy and that you're going to die when you're 70. That's not true. But intermittent fasting can make you eat based off of hunger, because when you go 18 hours without eating, you're definitely going to feel hungry after that 18 hours, and that's what I like about it. My next tip for you is to weigh yourself and measure yourself on a consistent basis. How many times a week should you weigh yourself? I would say at least one. In similar conditions, same day, go 12 hours without food or drink, weigh yourself in your underwear, same scale. Try to keep things as consistent as possible. If you have a late night meal, you probably don't want to weigh yourself the next day because you haven't processed all that stuff. You can weigh yourself every day. I'm doing that now just because I have a scale. It's like right there, and it doesn't take a lot of time to step on the scale. I find that when I don't step on the scale consistently, that the numbers tend to creep up. Because if you don't track things don't get better, they get worse. That's the law of entropy, right? We go from order to disorder, and if you're not tracking things get out of control. I also recommend that you measure yourself once a month with one of these things. Okay, I like to measure my chest, my stomach, so I go right across the belly button, my waist, and then my thigh. If you're a female, you can probably skip the chest, obviously, but measure the other three. You might want to check your neck circumference too. That's a little harder to do by yourself. Sometimes the scale has a mind of its own and it doesn't go down even when you're doing everything right. So I like to use this just to just as another way to measure my my progress, to make sure that I'm not gaining when I don't want to. You can get one of these for $5. It's a very easy way to track your body composition and to make sure that you're not gaining weight. My next tip for you is to cut back on restaurants. When you're in your 30s, you have more money than when you were in your 20s. When you're in your 20s, you're buying fast food. You're not really buying good stuff. When you're in your 30s, you have more money, which means more money to eat out, more gourmet meals. But when you have more money to eat out, you're also exposing yourself to a lot more oil and a lot more sugar. Portion sizes at restaurants have grown tremendously in the last 40 years. Appetizers are cheaper, there's more options, they're tastier, the marketing is better. It's really easy to overeat at restaurants unless you eat super simple stuff. Like I went to a restaurant last week and I got salmon and grilled vegetables. If that's all you get, you're probably okay. But if you go to a place like Cheesecake Factory or P.F. Chang's or one of these major chains, or even just any Mexican restaurant or like an Asian restaurant, they use a lot of oil in that stuff. That's what really drives up the calories. So you want to be careful, you want to be conscious. If you go to a Mexican restaurant, try not to eat so many tortilla chips before your meal. Maybe don't order a dessert when you go out, or maybe just order dessert and skip the entree. People have done that. What happens is when people go to restaurants, they get the drink, they get the appetizer, they get the entree, they get the dessert, and it's like an entire day of food or calories in one meal. If you're gonna eat at restaurants or you can't avoid it, just be super aware of what you're eating. Just savor every bite. You're not gonna get too many of them. Try to order healthier options if available. Just understand that a lot of these dishes have a lot more fat, a lot more carbs, and a lot more salt than what you think. Yes, you can always check online for the nutrition information, but in general, be very conscious of what you're doing in a restaurant. I hope you found these tips useful. Are there any other tips that you recommend for people in their 30s on how to stay fit and how to be healthy? Let me know in the comments below. And if you want to see more videos like this, check out some of my other videos. Again, don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you never miss a video, and I'll see you next time.